Hello and welcome. I'm Shankar Venkatgiri, your instructor for Statistics for Business 1.
And I'm his Fleur de Liza.
In our first session, we kicked off a statistical study with a dataset that we downloaded from the World Bank website. Now, on our spreadsheet, we have columns labeled country name, country code, region, and followed by 16 years. And then we have the summary measures that we were talking about. And we have all the way up to row 164, which is 161 countries worth of data. We now move away from concise single point numerical summaries to more visual summaries. In this session, we shall learn how to capture and convey the distribution of points within a data set. Now, country name, country code, region, and all of those year names stand for the variables of our data set.
That's easy. Their entries vary.
As opposed to entries being constant. Now, it's the grand purpose of statistics to describe variation, and we'll see what we can do today. Let me get back. We have United States at the very top, and if I were to highlight this row, I have the information for all of these variables, country code, region, and so on, for the United States. This is what I call a record or a case. A typical data set is nothing but a collection of records. If there's only one variable for which all of this data has been recorded, then it is termed as a univariate data set. Speaking of multivariate data, let's examine the scales of these variables. So far, we've been dealing with numerical variables in the form of tourism receipts. There are other types or scales of variables as well. Scales are important because they determine the techniques that we will use to analyze the data.
What's the mean of the region variable?
You get my point. I have United States here at the top belonging to North America region. India is over here in the South Asia region. Broadly, such an association is classified as categorical. Unlike numerical values, these categories are not comparable. You cannot compare them. They are simply names, and the scale of the region variable is deemed nominal or name. We have to be careful. Categorical variables can masquerade as numbers, as in the case of a telephonic country code. It's a number, but you can't compare those numbers. Is that clear? Sometimes categorical values can be compared. Let's look at the metadata countries tab and the income group variable over here. Let me just bold that. So let me scroll down to Nepal, which is at the 171th row over here. And if I were to scroll down to Philippines at row 180, we have Nepal belonging to the low income category of the income group, whereas Philippines belongs to lower middle income, just as I said. So such variables where comparisons are feasible are called ordinal, reflecting an ordering of the values or the levels. As you can imagine, every ordinal variable is already nominal. The next higher scale is interval. Consider the time series for the GDP of a country, where we have one column for the year and another for a figure in millions of dollars reflecting the GDP of that country. The year variable is an interval variable, given that there is the constant difference of 1 year between any two consecutive values. Now, the highest scale for a variable is the ratio scale, which we often encounter. Our tourism receipts for every year in our data set are a classic example. Looking at the top two countries, the foreign tourism receipts for 1995 was about $93 billion for the United States and about $31 billion for France.
That's like 3:1.
You're right. That's a ratio, and it means something in our context, right? Such variables are deemed ratio variables.
How is this different from an interval variable?
In our GDP data, consider the year 2010. Is it twice 1005?
It's 5 times 402. I'm good at math.
She is, but does it make sense? We'd rather discuss the notion of elapsed time, right, between these 2 years. All this stems from the meaning of a zero value for the variable. In our GDP series, suppose we had data available for every year in existence. Then year equal to 0 would stand for 0 AD. Let's assume that somebody was tracking our economy at that time. There were years on record before 0 AD, right? It's not like time went missing.
Help!
Now, if the tourism receipts for a country were 0 for a certain year, then we would conclude that the receipts were simply absent for that year. We've come to the end of this segment. We now understand that all variables are not created equal.
Some are categorical and others are numerical.
Right, and our choice of statistical techniques is dictated by the scale of the variable. So it is important that you practice this concept. We'll give you a few exercises. In our next segment, we will show you how to deal with categorical variables.
And we categorically bid you goodbye.
She's smart, isn't she?